Storm! Shit! Storm Strike! Shaman!
Man! Now that's exactly why you're still a goddamn virgin!
Oh, shut up, man! I had intercourse, says before. But most of you probably can't right now, because you gotta stay in your fucking home, yo! So the next best thing is Enhancement Shaman, because Enhancement Shaman is pumping and it will get you there always, as opposed to... So stay tuned, we will look at the basics and fundamentals of the spec, talents, essences, corruptions, rotation, and some tips and tricks so you can pick it up quick and blast that community perception. Use protection. Enhancement is surprisingly outperforming Elemental in Mythic Nyalotha, but that doesn't really matter, does it? The spec is fun, the spec can dish out the damage, and most of all, people will already have low expectations, which lowers their risk of being disappointed by you. Wait. Dad! You left your letter of recommendation in my job application shit again. On the first row, because professional YouTube content creators always start at number 1, take Lightning Shield. No secrets here. And also, before we go any further, Enhancement Shaman has only one efficient build right now that performs the best, by a decent enough margin to not consider the other two. Yes, there are 2 other builds that play differently and have different gear, talents, Azurite, etc. We will not cover those, but you are free to check the Shaman Discord or any of our past enhancement videos to get the deets. So moving on. Forceful Winds will be your option on the second row, empowering your Wind Fury to cause your successive Wind Fury attacks to increase the Wind Fury damage and Maelstrom generation your Wind Fury attacks do. Confusing? The build essentially revolves around Wind Fury and Storm Strikes, and this talent should be pretty self-explanatory. It's all passive, so you don't need to worry about it. Next up, we have a utility row with really only one viable option, that being Spirit Wolf. Earth Shield is... what? LOL? In BFA, there's literally no time and reason to go out of your way and heal someone, and the baseline heal of the ability is mediocre at best. Static charge is most of the time not needed, leaving you with Spirit Wolf, which is not bad actually. The defensive power of it and the move speed takes a few seconds to stack, but on its own is a passive damage reduction with no cooldown, and the only downside being that of stopping you from doing damage. As opposed to being dead, moving down you get Hailstorm. This option makes your Frostbrand ability mandatory in your rotation. On top of that, the build is high haste, high octane, meaning you will get a lot of flat value from this. More so, there will be another reason to get this justified by the Azurite trade choice, which we will check in a bit. The fifth row is a survivability slash utility slash... I don't know what the fuck to say to categorize this shit. Nature's Guardian is the simplest, almost cheat death type mechanic that heals you when your health dips. It's passive, you cannot control it, and it also has a 45-second internal cooldown. Feral Lunge is the mobility option, gives you a charge-like ability. Good when you need to go out, drop a pile of shit, then get back in. Wind Rush is the raid helper option if you're a good boy or girl. Pop this down when your raid needs to move from point A to point B, and people will love you for it. Not as much as when you take out the trash or do the dishes, but hey, you take what you can get. The sixth row has some options. Yay! Sundering will be your default option for all content and all scenarios, especially Mythic Plus. This bad boy slams the ground in front of you, dealing high damage and incapacitates the target. This stops casts and channels and certain mechanics in dungeons, so very helpful there. In raids, an alternative is Fury of Air. This also implies you run the Memory of Lucid Dreams minor, and you will have an efficient way to dump Maelstrom once you get to that high octane phase of your rotation, where you are just so full of Maelstrom but still spamming Storm Strikes. Last row, also 2 viable options. Ascendance will be your single target option, good in raids, especially if the fight lasts long enough for you to cast it twice. It gives you a bit of range, which can come in handy, especially helping you with uptime, since there are plenty of mechanics that force you away from your target. Can of course work in dungeons as well, but Elemental Spirits tends to be a better option, especially if you need frequent, smaller bursts of damage. This can also be used on certain raid fights, depending on your group's strategy and when it's expected of people to dish out a lot of damage quick. Mostly you will use this in dungeons since the encounter profile fits this cooldown a lot better. When it comes to stats, pretty much all of them are good. Going for haste, crit and versatility in a somewhat balanced fashion will work just fine. There are of course situations where you stray away from these, especially if you have the corruptions that increases X stat from all sources gains. There you can skew heavily into said stat. Mastery will be a bit lower on the priority list. The only real correct answer for you is to sim, otherwise if you had to choose between equal eye levels, haste and crit will usually perform better. Always remember that versatility provides you with tankiness as well, which is especially important when you push hard, difficult content. With that being said, you can choose consumables in multiple ways as you try to keep your stats balanced, but for the sake of this video and not flood the screen with all sorts of images, we will keep this a haste-centric recommendation. So, a Cord of Haste and Quicksand Spinels will be your easiest to add and replace at the moment. Depending on your eye level, you may or may not want a Leviathan's Eye of Agility in. I am. Put a quick navigation enchant and a force multiplier one on your two weapons and you will be set there. Move on to the Greater Flask of the Currents for your agility needs and Potion of Unbridled Fury as your DPS potion of choice. You can stuff your face with feasts or use the baked potatoes haste food for your #1 alternative. Feasts can be expensive and inefficient to use outside of raids unless you are that one guy that bought his long boy day one, in which case who are you and add me on Battle.net. The Azurite traits are fairly standard for both raiding and Mythic Plus content. There is a best setup to aim for but can be tricky to achieve. Natural Harmony stacked 3 times will be your bread and butter. This is the trait I mentioned that makes your Frostbrand mandatory to proc the mastery buff component of the trait. Since you'll be rotating your elemental damage on a fairly fast pace, the uptime of this baby will be very high. Get Whirling Storm once, the additional damage stacks, but you really want it for the guaranteed Stormbringer proc every 20 seconds. This not only increases your damage, but reduces downtime, making your rotation smooth. Thunderon's Fury is another one of those one-off procs that you can get, which does not stack. This will increase your Wind Fury count, which works really well with the Forceful Winds talent. Ancestral Resonance is also another good trait you can get one of. Increasing the uptime of Bloodlust is great, and the Mastery proc, even though Mastery is meh, is pretty high for a single one-off trait. For any other missing traits, you can fill in with Heart of Darkness, and as you figured out by now, yeah, stat traits are pretty good, especially when there's a balance between them. When getting your essences, raids and dungeons use different setups this time. The majors that work really well in raids are Condensed Life Force and Whirlvein Resonance. Life Force is the Eternal Palace one, which you can thankfully get now because Blizzard listened. Unlike Santa, who keeps bringing me condoms every year even though I never get to use them. Whirlvein Resonance is just a major main stat factory on a very short cooldown, and it assumes you don't move outside the buff range once you pop it. Plus, more and more specs are starting to use it, so even the minor proc is good. Looking at you, Demolock. As for actual minors, Breath of the Dying is a big DPS pump, Focusing Iris gives you a big haste chunk, provided you don't swap targets. Memory of Lucid Dreams is mandatory if you play Fury of Air. Conflict and Strife is a good versatility alternative for everything versatility related. In dungeons, you want Blood of the Enemy as the best major to get. Works especially well at rank 3 with Elemental Spirits since they have the same cooldown, giving you a nice burst window on those dangerous packs. Conflict and Strife is sometimes a mandatory minor. The tankiness from versatility is a much bigger deal in dungeons. Breath of the Dying, still high damage, still good, with Focusing Iris for the same argument as before. Haste. When choosing trinkets and for a lot of other options, you can and should check bloodmallet.com, where there's a comprehensive list of the best options in the game. That, or you can just sim whatever options you have looted. Alternatively, Vita Charge, Titan Shard, and Humming Black Dragon Scale are the best haste options and 2 of the best performing options you can have from this raid tier if you don't aim at doing any high mythic keys. If you are coming from the last tier and still have it, Ashvane's Razor Coral is still very good in the way it performs and probably still the best crit trinket in the game. Otherwise, Deadeye Spyglass is your dungeon alternative, essentially another crit factory. A worthwhile mention here is the Gale Caller's Boon, currently the best simming trinket for enhancement with the current build, at least as far as single target damage is concerned, although with a caveat you need to keep in mind of the downside of moving outside of its range. In terms of corrupted weapons, there is really only one you can get and actually is also the best in slot, and that is Ungund Caress. Is that right? Is that how you say it? This comes with the Lash of the Void corruption effect that is very cheap and very strong. If you can't get two of those, or Rated Eternal Palace, Diver's Folly is a good offhand weapon to have. High level isn't as impactful in your offhand, although it's still relevant, and the proc effect of the weapon deals decent AoE damage. This doesn't mean you can just get an LFR Folly, but you can still have it Titanforged since the system applies to the old raid. We all know the top corruption effects, which sim really well but are super expensive and RNG-ish. Infinite Stars and Twilight Devastation are the best options for single target and AoE respectively, but also the most expensive, at rank 3 of course. Lash of the Void, on the other hand, together with Gushing Wounds, are the best damage per corruption you can get in the game. Gushing Wounds though is a bit harder to get. Outside of these, Expedient, ideally at rank 3, is one of the best corruptions you can aim for, good in all situations, not RNG-ish, so very consistent in its performance, especially since it's cheap and easily stackable. You always want to open with the pre-pot before the pool. Cast Rockbiter for some initial Maelstrom. Activate Fury of Air, cast Flame Tongue, cast Frost Brand, pop Feral Spirits, cast the Storm Strike, and pop Ascendance, then start Wind Striking. After this, move on to the priority rotation. In terms of priority, as in which ability is more important to cast before the others, Fury of the Air sits at the top if not already active. Wind Strike next if within the Ascendance window. Make sure Flame Tongue buff is applied. Flame Tongue. Cast Feral Spirits on cooldown, cast Frostbrand to maintain the Hailstorm buff, cast Ascendance on cooldown next, use Storm Strikes regardless of procs, Rockbiter when you dip below 70 Maelstrom and are about to cap on charges, refresh Flame Tongue if there are less than 4.5 seconds remaining, refresh Frostbrand if Hailstorm has less than 4.5 seconds remaining, Lava Lash when above 50 Maelstrom or 40 if you don't have Fury of the Air talented, and fill in with Rockbiter and Flame Tongue. The priority system's goal is to give you an idea of the importance of the abilities depending on the circumstances. There are quite a few procs to keep track of and cooldowns on top of it all. WeCars can help you with that, and we have an add-on video that can also help you with that. In multi-target scenarios, you will want to weave in Crash Lightning on as many targets as you can, as many times as you can. The mechanics of this spell activate when you hit at least 2 targets and transforms your Storm Strikes and Lava Lashes into AoE abilities while also buffing your next Storm Strike. You still want to keep your buffs up and pop your cooldowns normally. This is just the beginning for enhancement. There is more to the spec than we can fit in one video, and we strongly recommend you check the Earth Shrine Discord channel, as well as online resources like Word Ups, Icy Veins, and Wowhead guides that contain a lot more depth and advanced information that we use for certain things in our video. Big shout out to Serge from the enhancement community who helped us with some feedback and clarifications on a bunch of things. Top-notch fellow, and you can chat with him and other good enhancement shamans by going to the Discord. Links are down below. Down below you'll also find the link to our Patreon page, and yes, with this chance we want to take a moment to thank our Patrons. Thank you for supporting us very much, guys. It really helps out to know that you guys are with us on this journey and we can continuously pump top quality content and make sure that you guys like what we do. So thank you very much, and you can also check the Patreon details down below, as well as some merch that we have, and if not already, in the near future Marcelian will have some new designs ready for you guys to get you some cool t-shirts and hoodies and all that good jazz. So don't miss it out. And thank you very much for watching the video. Hope it helped, and we'll catch you in the next one. Don't miss it out. What the fuck does that mean?